I'll meet you there, I promise.
The original Tales of Xillia made some positive strides for the long-running RPG series, but it was clear Bandai Namco wasn't ready to completely abandon the game's tried-and-true formula. 2 years later, we're treated to a follow-up, Tales of Xillia 2, and once again Bandai Namco introduces new blood in an attempt to change things up for the better. However, it's clear the series isn't quite ready to shed its old skin.
If there's something troubling you, Leia, feel free to talk to me about it.
In the previous outing, players were presented with the option to take the role of Mila Maxwell or Jude Mathis. The choice gave the impression you could have a direct impact on the story, though in reality, playing as one or the other gave you only a few different insights into each character's background. In Xillia 2, you step into the role of Ludger Kresnik, a silent protagonist that's presented with numerous choices over the course of the story. These choices come in the form of dialogue trees, where you pick from one of two responses. While no stranger to the RPG genre, these choices give you the impression that you can influence the outcome of any situation. Unfortunately, you'll soon realize that they don't drastically impact the overall flow of the narrative, aside from your final decision at the very end of the game.
For the first time ever, you and I are thinking the exact same thing.
Instead, you'll get a slightly different outcome to a conversation at best, or earn favor with a certain character in order to build up your affinity with them. Improving your relationship with your party members is a mechanic that returns from the previous game, although allowing the player the ability to influence their status via choices during conversations feels more meaningful than simply pairing up with them in combat, like before. The entire cast of the original game returns, though you're introduced to them one by one over the course of the first few hours. It's nice to see how they've changed since the first game, and the cast is still as energetic as ever. What makes it work is the witty writing effort, which delivers some humorous moments during the series' regular skit sequences. It just wouldn't be a Tales game without them, and these are enjoyable moments you won't want to skip.
If you're so nosy, then why don't you tell us all what you're made of?
Me? I'm made of kindness and rainbows. Oh, come on. Nothing? Not even a smile? Now this is just embarrassing.
On the flip side, the developers opted to keep the main hero, Ludger, mostly mute. He utters a few words here and there, but when you make your choices, he never speaks up. It's really jarring in what's otherwise a well-told story. What's worse is that once you complete the game, you can start up a new adventure where Ludger will speak the dialogue you select during the important choice sequences. Holding this option behind a gate is a big mistake.
When we contact the spirit realm, we'll need you to explain to them what's going on. We wouldn't want to tick them off.
While the skits and character interactions can be very humorous at times, Xillia 2 is a distinctly dark and depressing tale about sacrifice and coping with the loss of loved ones. Yes, there's still the overarching plot of trying to save the world, but the game does a remarkable job of delivering great character arcs and can hit hard. Just when you think things couldn't get any more depressing, the next chapter will leave you on the brink of tears. It's all punctuated by one of two bittersweet finales, neither of which results in a truly happy ending for everyone.
You can't give up, or Bunnykins won't come for a visit.
Xillia 2 nails the story aspect, and it's also the primary driving force in terms of progression. The game is broken into over a dozen chapters, but you'll also have the option to explore additional side stories involving your party members. In addition to giving you greater insight into each character, completing them will often give you bonus sequences during key cutscenes that fill in more of the picture.
Now he's just kissing up.
Exploring this game's story is easily the highlight of the experience, but not everything is perfect. A majority of the game's world and environments are holdovers from the original Xillia, with virtually nothing altered about their appearance. In fact, we complained about the horrible model loading times when entering area maps in Xillia, and the exact same issue plagues the sequel. Literally, the same objects that popped up late happened again like we were playing the original game. If the sequel is going to rely on so many recycled assets, this is inexcusable. Visual issues aside, you're not going to want to explore the same regions you've been before. In the early goings, backtracking through familiar territory gets tedious, but eventually you're given two abilities that help speed things up. First, you get the ability to warp to any previous destination with the click of a button, just like the original game, though it still requires you to first step foot into unexplored areas. Ludger also has the ability to run extremely fast across each map. The trade-off is that he can't maneuver very well or stop on a dime, and if you run into an enemy, no matter if it's head-on, you'll automatically start the battle off at a disadvantage. However, it's easy to avoid these situations, so being able to speed by areas you've potentially seen hundreds of times is a welcomed addition. Despite this improvement, it says a lot about a game's exploration when the developers actively encourage you to bypass key portions of it. Rather, Xillia 2 attempts to focus on what it does well: great narrative sequences and intense combat. It would just be nice if the developers compelled us to actually spend more time in these environments, other than trying to cross them to reach the next objective. Sure, you can farm materials to complete side quests, but that's remedial work that gets dull fast.
Booger! Time to ditch this party.
Don't forget Roger!
This sentiment also extends to another Xillia 2 mechanic that requires you to pay off your debt. In Tom Nook fashion, Ludger incurs a hefty bill early in the game and must pay it off in order to advance the story and unlock new regions. At first, it seems very restrictive, but eventually you'll forget about it as the game moves at a brisk pace after the initial few hours. You also get the option at times to pick which area you want to unlock. Regardless of which area you end up in, you're going to encounter numerous enemies and eventually a boss. The combat system in Xillia 2 is virtually identical to its predecessor in every way, from the art system, linking with the partner, and unlocking and activating latent skills. The only new mechanics are the ability to change out weapon types on the fly when controlling Ludger, and the chromatus transformation. Eventually, the hero will get a pair of pistols and a giant hammer to accompany his dual blades, and players can swap them out in real time to adapt to certain battle situations, even if it feels a bit underutilized.
Hey! You get it? A blast! Like from a gun!
Additionally, players can fill up their chromatus meter by attacking in battle. When it's full, you can undergo a transformation that allows Ludger to dish out more powerful attacks without taking any damage. It can come in handy in tough situations, but it also reduces a bit of the game's overall difficulty. Overall, the combat system is still one of the better versions the series has seen, and very few RPGs out there can match the real-time action that Tales has to offer. However, we can't completely overlook its various flaws, most prominently the over-reliance on the existing game's world without giving us enough new areas to enjoy. There's virtually no sense of exploration, and many of the small issues that popped up in the original are still inexplicably present here.
It's time! My fists will open the heavens! Final fury!
It's a tough hurdle to overcome for those curious about investing their time and money into the nearly 40 hours of Xillia 2, but we can't dismiss how much we enjoy the narrative. It's a different tone than we're used to seeing, and it's a welcomed one that shows the Tales games can be made of more than just typical anime archetypes. So while it's lacking the right amount of fresh exploration, Xillia 2 is a strong story component and combat system, and is a solid RPG.
You've gotten stronger!